Okay, fellas, today we got kind of a different thing. We're starting Project Painkiller, and I didn't think I'd be able to do it this year, but some things just fell into place and it ended up so I'm able to actually start it this year, so I'm really excited. Today, what we're doing is I already switched out the radiator, because if you watch my riding, I've had a tendency to overheat. And so now I have a second radiator, so I'll be able to just swap them out in between rides and stuff like that. So that's number one. The second thing we're working on right now, you can see the shock is already loose. What we're doing is a 2.5-inch Super ATV lift kit, just a bracket lift. And this is kind of a how-to video on how to do that lift. I'm not going to show you every single detail, but I'll give you the rundown on how to do it. It's actually pretty straightforward, just it bolts up pretty easy. And the first thing you have to do when you're doing this lift, obviously get it jacked up, take the tires off. The stock BRP lug nuts are 17 mil. To get the shock out of the shock bracket, you'll need two 15 millimeter, whether that's sockets or wrenches, whatever you want. It's actually a charade. So, like, I'm learning this all with you, and it's actually easier. It's actually easier if you pull the entire shock out, because it's dangling, it's just in the way like a freaking mess. So these big flat guys here, these guys are the front brackets, and you can see this tab there, how I actually had to bend that out just to get this bracket to fit in. So this is the rad hose. You'll have to undo that. The bracket slides in and then slides up like that. There's a bolt that goes through there, and then in the backside, right in there, I don't know if you can see it because of shadows and shit, but there's another bolt that goes in there. Once those two bolts are in and tight, then you can put the shock right in there, and then that's your lift. That exactly is your lift. And it's the same thing on the passenger side, with the exception of on the passenger side, the air, like the feed for the air box has to come off. Just kind of like the rad hose here, it's just in the way. So you can see the passenger side lift bracket is the same, just mirrored as the driver's side. Okay, so we'll get these brackets in, hopefully get the shock mounted on, and check back in with you.
How about I try?
If you think.
I can squeeze my little hand.
It's not that, it's the feel. It's just feeling it, and it's not like they give you a nice countersunk hole here, so it can just feel like it can find its way in.
Man, having trouble putting bolt in hole. A problem since the beginning of time.
Yeah, and now the bolt fell and didn't hit the ground.
Yes, it did.
No,
it's
it
behind
didn't.
the jack, honey.
The nut fell and didn't hit the ground.
Oh, good. So, how about you take a break here for a hot minute and I get in there.
So, what you are seeing is probably 25 minutes of struggle. Thank God Dad had a replacement nut, because I dropped it and I can't find it. It's one of those things where there's a meme floating around where you drop the nut, the wrench, whatever, and you don't hear it hit the floor. That's what happened. I have no idea where that nut ended up.
We found some
leaves and shit,
yeah,
and rocks and a chunk of a rotted log, but
no nut.
No nut. So that is just that one right there. If you can see in there, it's that bolt there. Now, if I was feeling ambitious, I would have taken the air box out, because it would have given you a lot more access. I was trying to take a shortcut, and it ended up with two people having to get in there. Stacy, thank God, her hands are about half the size of mine, so they were able to fit. And the other bolt you'll need two 10 mils for this. It's this little guy here, and it goes in this little wing here. So once those two are in, then you're good to put the shock back in, and then you'll have the lift on this side. Easy peasy Japanese, right? The hardest part is that bastard right there. So we're gonna put this one in, and then we'll put the shock back in, and then we'll see where we're at. And the other thing here, guys, is just fishing tools in tight spaces and stuff like that. You know, this is what people who are auto mechanics for a living, they must have kicked my light
Sorry,
down.
baby.
The people who are auto mechanics for a living, they must have an absolutely retarded amount of patience, because like I work in construction and I do not have patience. So our motto in construction is, if it doesn't fit, get a hammer, and if that doesn't work, get a bigger hammer, right? So with this, when you're working with, 10mm bolts and stuff like that, that doesn't exactly work. Tapped and drilled holes, you can't exactly force shit, so it's got to work. And what I will say to BRP, and I think I talked about this earlier, is, would it kill you to bust out a welder and tack some nuts in place? And Tim, Tow Truck Tim, is probably watching this video, and I guarantee he is laughing his ass off at me talking about mechanics and how bullshit it is, because that's what Tow Truck is. He's a mechanic. Okay. So, just gonna rest that there for now, and try and do this. Yeah, get her in the hole, son, in the hole. Probably going to be more of a funny video than an instructional video, because I am really just faking it till I make it right now. Like,
I couldn't tell.
okay, so basically, guys, how this works is, now that it's actually in place and this is done, it pushes the shock position. So your shock naturally sits on an angle like this, right? And what this lift does is, not only does it lower the mounting position up here, it pushes it more vertical. So I've heard people say it affects the ride quality. I don't know about that. These shocks, I mean, they're stock Can-Am shocks. They aren't the best. But what I will say is, if you ever go to change the shocks with this lift in, it's a hell of a lot more accessible now, right? You got 2 cross bolts and boom, Bob's your uncle, she's in. So now this is the driver's side done. We're going to go around to the passenger side and do the same thing. As you can see, your upper shock bolt is kind of obscured by the air hose. So the air hose has to come off, which is a charade. Like, this one isn't too bad, but on the back side there, it's a 7mm. I'm going to see if I can just undo this one and pull it. Like, it's a flexible hose, so that probably is going to work. And all you got to do is get that shock bolt out. Same with this lower one. Just get it the hell out of there. And it'll be the same bullshit on this side as we had on the other side, because the air box is right there. It's right tight. Very minimal access. So it's a struggle again. But now that we got it figured from that first side, trial and error and all that stuff. As Ricky says, denial and error. This side should go a lot quicker. Okay, so for the back side, it's a lot easier. You have to take the bump stops off. You can see it over there on that side. It's just it catches the base of the bed so it doesn't vibrate. And then basically, same thing, just pull the shock and install the bracket. And that's pretty much it. The back is a lot more straightforward. And in the event you guys can't see, which I think you can, it's very, very accessible. So it's much more friendly to work on.
For plumbers.
For plumbers. For people who don't know what they're doing. It's actually fantastic. So this should go a lot smoother now.
What's happening?
That's so stupid. You have to notch this.
Oh, for the hoses?
Yeah. For the diff tube. The diff vent tube. You have to actually notch that out. So
Super ATV, if you're listening.
yeah, that's brutal engineering. Like, you guys didn't think of that? That's horrible. So I got to get a grinder and basically grind that back corner off, so it can actually fit. Cool. Not cool. I'm just kidding. Okay, I'll be right back. The one thing you have to remember is, when you put the bump stop back on, like the piece of rubber the bed sits on, you have to put that piece back in before you put the shock in. I had the shock in and then I had to take it back out again just to make it work. So, hey, learn from it. And you guys are learning from my mistakes, which is awesome, so you don't have to make them. And on the driver's side, you have to either drill, or, where's that bracket? drill, or what I did was I took a grinder and I just cut the corner off. It would be the passenger side of this bracket, because your differential vent tubes go there. So you have to take a little bit of that metal away. Either that or you have to drill a new hole and do all that stuff. I'm feeling kind of lazy. I don't feel like doing that. So you take that little corner off and there you go. It fits snug as a bug in a rug. And it's a matter of a couple of bolts to put it in. It's actually a really easy job in the back. There's lots of room. There's nothing in the way. It's pretty straightforward. So for those who say you can fit 30-inch cryptids with no trimming, I'd like to know how you did that, because I just trimmed off about 1.25 inches on the bottom and it still doesn't fit. So I feel lied to by the Commander community. So today, summary of what we did. First thing we did this morning was change out the rad for the new one, and the day would have gone a lot quicker. I had to wash the machine off. It's still filthy, but there were some delays, let's just put it that way. So we got the rad changed out pretty quick, and the very next thing we did right away was install the Super ATV 2.5-inch lift. Front, pain in the ass. Back, easy, very easy. And the last thing we did was put some 30-inch ITP cryptids, 30 by 10, 14-inch rim, MSA M41 wheels. And despite what I was told on the Commander forum that has 11,000 members, you do need to trim when you put 30-inch cryptids on with a 2.5-inch lift. And we had to trim a lot, about 1.25 inches, eh? It started off on an angle, and yeah, we had to take about 1.25 inches of material off just so these tires would fit. So, and people have also said cryptids measure out at 29.5 inches. They're wrong. These measure out at 30.5 inches. So I don't know if there is some discrepancies at the ITP factory or what, but we had to do some trimming. They're 30.5. The rims have a slight offset to them, so I'm still debating on whether or not to do the 1-inch wheel spacers just to push the wheels out a little bit more. I think it looks pretty good as is. In terms of ground clearance, we've gained a ton between the bigger tires and the lift. So what I did before is I had my shocks set to full hard just to gain some ground clearance. I don't know what it is about this lift, but it makes the front sit just a tad bit higher. So I've actually turned the shocks 3 clicks back down to like 3 clicks softer, just so it kind of brought the front end down so it's a little more level. And yeah, other than that, we're gonna go for a bit of a test drive here. There's a bush trail out back at Dad's house. We're just gonna take a rip through there and just make sure everything is good, make sure the coolant's topped off enough, make sure nothing's screwed up from what I did. So yeah, you guys are gonna come along for that, because of course you are. So I'll see you in the trail. Low, now I'm gonna try doing this. Look at the side of the road. You can see how much snow we got, which is, I know the camera doesn't really show it, but it's a little over a foot, looks like maybe 14, 15 inches. And I'm gonna try this trail in 2-wheel drive with the new tires and the lift, and we'll see how we do. Because usually, the issue is I usually just get high center. So we'll see how we do.